Cool. Yes. Welcome to the second episode of The Curious Songwriter. I am so happy that you joined in again. Uh, Before I even start this episode, I want to tell you that this is going to be a long one for multiple reasons. Number one being that this song was written way back in 2018 and it was released in 2020. It's the most relevant in the current times that we're living in. The idea behind the song and the way she went around making this song happen was something very fascinating for me to just kind of be an audience to. When I was editing this episode, I was thinking which part of this should I even cut, which is why this episode is long. Usually I try to keep a duration of not more than 30 to 40 minutes. There's so much wonderful insight in this episode that I'm sure you're going to take something or the other out of this. So I've been a fan of her music for a really long time, and if you haven't heard the song before, I'd urge you to check it out. The link is in the description below. So check the song out, then come back to this episode. Grab a cup of coffee or just a notepad maybe if you're into taking notes. Yeah, let's get into it in 3, 2, 1.
Sorry, can we start again?
Yeah.
My throat's being weird. Man, this episode is not meant to happen, I feel.
Do you want to grab some water?
Yeah, just give me a second.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me about how Age of Limbo happened.
So I wrote this song about a year and a half ago while watching an episode of Conan O'Brien Without Borders. And I was watching the episode literally for any reason that a person would watch Conan, which is to get a laugh out of it. There was one scene from the episode where they were at the border between Israel and Syria. And he was talking to a couple of troops who were saying that there's constant firing at that time. And firing ranges from moderate firing to a lot, depending on the time of the day or the date. And the day that they were there was actually pretty calm, relatively calm. And still, through the recording, I could hear bombs going off, I could hear gun firing, and it was a little distressing because in a comedy show, you'd expect that you wouldn't hear anything super serious, but this was all of a sudden seeing secondhand a war zone from a distance.
With Effie and Ziv.
Yes.
We are here on the Golan Heights, and we are looking into Syria, site of just the worst civil war imaginable.
You can hear that's the civil war.
What we're hearing right now
is exchange of fire between the regime and the rebels. That's the city of Nukunetra. That city is controlled by the regime, okay, by Assad's military, and the village right here is controlled by rebels.
That's machine gun fire we're here, rifle
heavy
fire?
Machine guns.
Heavy machine gun.
Yeah.
And this is going on all the time.
This is relatively calm, okay, and relatively calm relative to a war.
That's mind-numbing that's relatively calm.
Relatively calm.
Yeah, I've never heard an actual war before. That's pretty sobering.
Where these troops are talking about how this usually happens and made me think about how it must be like to live in that kind of state of unrest. Waking up to the sound of bombs, like what that must do to your heart, what that must do to your mind. Constantly hearing of someone you know who's been affected. So all of those thoughts were going through my head, and that's when I wrote Age of Limbo. I think I was also drawing from experiences we were having in India at the time. There was a lot of mob lynchings, I remember. Communal violence. And I was just thinking, like, where it is at such a state that, something that we're going through right now could escalate to something far worse. We're just like bordering on some kind of high level conflict. It just got me thinking at that point in time, what happened in those few seconds that we were all watching from the sidelines? And it made me think about how we are always living in some state of limbo, whether we choose to recognize it or accept it or not.
So you see this episode of Conan and you're very evidently affected by it. Do you start writing right after that? What was it that got you writing?
That visual and that moment in the episode haunted me for a few days. But this kind of stayed with me for a while. I remember even days later, I'm just like, wow, something about that scene just really haunted me. And I had this line which is like, Age of Limbo, welcome to the Age of Limbo. That's the first thing that came to me.
Okay.
And then I'm like, now where do I go with the song? I have this, it's got chorus potential. I can
Yeah.
lead this chorus. How do I start the song? What is the song trying to tell me besides Welcome to the Age of Limbo?
Right.
So I usually do this thing where I like let the leading line dictate the rest of the song.
Okay.
And I'm like, am I going to try and write it about my point of view? Am I going to just, is it going to be like a story narrative? Is it going to just be observational? What is it? And I didn't know how to start the song. So I have like a note on my phone which is called Song Thoughts. And I just put down a whole lot of fragments of lines and ideas, sometimes titles, concepts. Sometimes it'll be like a whole paragraph to write on. And I just shelve it for later, I never know when it comes in handy. And in this case, it did. Literally, like the first line on that was, like a deer in the headlights, I've come under attack. I'm like,
Yeah.
boom, first line.
So
And
this
I'm
was
like,
a
it's just,
line you had written like a while ago, the like a deer
yeah,
in the headlight.
I had written this line also completely separately, not to do with this. And I had
Okay.
literally everything, like the chorus was written.
Okay.
And like I just need that one seed for the verse to know where I'm going with it.
Right.
And then from there on, it was like the rest of the song I wrote in some 25 minutes.
Okay, so you had the entire song written in the next 20-25 minutes. It was a one sitting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That was it. And it was just usually the first point or the first 2 points are the hardest to kind of fix. And then from there, it kind of like flows and there's something built around it. So I just needed that first pivotal idea to get to.
Yeah.
And in this case, it just happened to be on my notes,
Right.
just there.
And do you
those
remember
lines-
where did the line like a deer in the headlights kind of come from?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember where I got these lines from or where it could have been like, I may have heard it on a podcast, like when someone just might have made the reference about being a deer on the headlights or someone driving and then a deer actually coming to the headlights. Something as
Right.
literal as that.
Right.
But just the visual of it was so striking that I had to put it down my notes.
Right. So you're constantly on the lookout for anything that affects you or any idea that you have, you just kind of put it down on your phone as notes.
Absolutely, yeah. If there's anything that I feel is song worthy or lyric worthy, it's there.
Right.
Sometimes I'll have like silly lines like "Don't count on me to be your hero," like really tacky.
Right.
But
Right.
also, like, if you obviously a line spoken out is very different than a line sung out. So you can't completely discount it. So I just like put it all there, and then maybe I'll later on salvage it, do something different with it. May not even come in handy, but it's a starting point at least.
When you say you had the song kind of written out, do you mean you had the tune or the chords or just the lines? How did you go about writing this song?
So the melody was like, "Welcome to the Age of Limbo," and in my mind, automatically the chords were like root and then sharp six. Like
Okay.
it just like that's how it should sound, or it could have been a minor third chord, but I'm like, no, sharp six is better.
So you
And
had
then
that right up your sleeve, like you had that idea right ahead.
yeah, like I might have just sat at the keyboard for some other rehearsal and then just tried it out and like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, cool, this leads. And then the third chord was like a very obvious, okay, go to the four, and then it comes back.
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, cool, I already know what vibe this is. It's got this very Bond kind of theme vibe.
Yeah.
Very moving on the minors, but all majors.
Yeah.
So to speak, which I love. I think that is a part of my alt rock influence that finds its way into my music.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, so the chord, the key is A flat major, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah.
right? But then you go all over the place. You're going to from an F minor. I think you're going on an E major. Then you're going on an E flat
Yeah.
at one place, and then you're coming back up again. And I think from an A flat major, you were also going on a minor there somewhere in the song. There's in
Like a
between, I
passing,
think,
yeah, just
in the
like a
passing.
passing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The song was
So
actually written on A major, by the way.
okay.
And then I just made it A flat because it was more interesting sounding.
Yeah.
Like for me, A still is a happier, more accessible sounding chord than an A flat. Like A flat's got a little more depth to it.
Yeah,
So
because
when I
we're
put it
used to listening an A major like a very regularly, but A flat, I think, is just slightly.
and it's not like people can listen to it and say, "Oh, this is definitely an A flat," unless they have perfect pitch.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the slightly unfamiliar sound of it, because you don't hear too many songs on E flat,
yeah. That's
is
true.
is what probably catches people on a subconscious level, I feel.
Yeah, yeah,
I think. I don't know.
yeah. I
I
mean, it
don't
does have
have a
an. I
position.
mean, we'll get to that process later about the
Yeah.
eerie feeling of the song.
Mhm.
So you wrote the song on. So you generally write on your keys, or you write on the guitars? How is it?
Off late, I've been writing more on the keys, yeah. Earlier,
Okay.
like 3 years back, it was more on the guitar.
Yeah, which is also something that I noticed because your first EP that came out, it had. I feel that most of the songs on that EP were written on the guitar because
Hmm.
it had that vibe of. Uh, I mean, just the when you start playing on the keys, you automatically start exploring a lot with
Yes.
your melodies and your chords, and that
And for me, I'm
experiment.
far more comfortable on the keys than I'm on the guitar.
Okay,
I can find my way on the guitar, like I know, okay, I can play literally every chord that I want to, but then just accessing that instantly, I find it way easier to do on the keyboard because it's linear, it's way more visual.
it is. And also I feel with a guitar, like I mean, if you want to try out like a chord, uh, you need to first have an idea to play
Yeah,
it because there is a different, like you'll have to just like adjust your fingers like very differently for a different chord. Whereas on the keys, it's just another key right next to it or like a little ahead, and that's how you can
yeah, that's
easily figure it out.
and sometimes you're like for the guitar you still need to form a shape to get a
Exactly.
sound.
Yeah.
But keys, literally, it's so much easier to like let your fingers land and form a sound
Yeah.
than it is like if you don't practice for like for a week or something, then you start feeling the pain on your fingertips, like
Yeah.
I am now. I've not been practicing.
Right.
um,
Right.
yeah, so for the keys, that way, like it's just easy to get that out. And for me, like if I close my eyes and I have to visualize placements of things, I visualize the keyboard straight up. Like some people
Okay.
probably it's guitar,
Yeah.
but for me, it's definitely keyboard because I started with it.
You start with the key, so that's
Mhm.
so like now you're writing the verse and you found your line like a deer in the headlights have kind of come under attack.
Mhm.
Are you also humming while you're writing these lines, or you just letting it flow?
But letting it flow. Sometimes I might not come up with the right idea on the first go. So then
Okay.
I started to learn to push myself to think of better ideas. Like earlier, I was in a zone where I'm like, first idea is best idea. But
Right. Right.
now I'm like, I'm trying to push myself to like rewrite better things that I write.
Okay.
Um,
So you're not
so,
thinking of the melody at this point in time when you're writing the
oh, the
song.
melody is actually the main thing that I'm thinking about.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, like for me, it kind of, I don't know which comes first. It
Yeah.
usually comes together.
Right.
I have never written a thing where I write the lyrics first and like, now let me put this to music.
Okay.
Like, as I'm writing itself, there's like a melody that's registered. Even if not a melody, like a fixed melody, there's a meter.
There's a
Like, I
meter.
know I want or something like that.
Right.
And I know that whatever melody I choose for that, that meter is fixed. And for me, the meter is the most important
Right.
Part of writing. Like when you have the meter fixed, you have the rhythm fixed, you have the tempo fixed, you're
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have all your boundaries in place, and now you can play within the field you have.
Yeah, the skeleton is kind of formed.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So while you're writing, you're also humming or like trying to figure the meter out for this song.
Yeah.
And so by the end of this writing session, did you also have your basic skeleton melody ready?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything.
Okay. So you
So
had
it was
your
just,
verse, you had your pre-chorus, and you had your chorus all set written in one. Now, do you
yeah.
usually write when you set out to write a song? Do you try and finish it entirely in one go, or does it so happen that you kind of write in sessions, like you figure one part out right now, and then probably like a week down the line you come back to it again? How's that process like?
Depends on the mood. I usually do verse chorus. I try and do in one sitting, at least first verse, first chorus. Bridge I sometimes leave for later because I think that sometimes leaving the bridge for later makes it sound even more interesting.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
mean, bridge by nature is the part of the song that you want to kind of take people away from the rest
yeah,
of it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll leave the bridge usually for later. Or if I'm really feeling the flow, then I'll write the bridge as well.
Right.
In this case, there's no bridge in a song.
Yeah,
It's literally verse, verse, chorus.
yeah. Is there a
And
specific reason you didn't have a bridge on this song?
yeah, I kind of wanted that tension to just be. Like I felt like it would have been a little too indulgent if for this song I went into a bridge. I
Okay.
just wanted to like keep this level of tension and sustain it and then just like wrap it up towards the end and then end it. Like I
Right,
wanted to give people just enough.
right,
I don't know.
right, right.
Like if
And
I carried
the
on a little longer or another verse, it may not have had the same appeal.
yeah, that's
At
true.
least,
Yeah.
yeah.
So now let's talk about the verse here. Like during the headlights, I've come under attack. Stop in my tracks and frozen still. I'm not wasted. I'll become what I will. What I will now. Uh, what are you thinking here? What? Uh, how is this? Like, what are you trying to say? I mean, of course, it's very much understandable what you're trying to say, but then how is this coming together? Do you remember what the process was like?
I think I was thinking about how all is not lost and they will bounce back. Like there is always the chance that you'll bounce back. In
Right.
fact, sometimes when you go back further, you bounce back even stronger.
Which is where the line kind of comes in, where I'm not wasted, I'll become what I
Yeah.
will now. It's kind of
The hope that I will come out of this as quickly as I got into it. I
uh,
think that's just me being optimistic, but yeah, it was just that.
right, right. And then you come down to the pre-chorus, which is, it gives me a sense of an unrest, like it's something ought to turn the table, something's got to give. Like there is a
Sense of frustration.
yeah, there's a sense of frustration. It's like almost how one kind of squirming in their chair. It's
Yeah.
almost that kind of and then you just kind of addressing that. Okay, now I know what I want to say here, and that's that we are in this age of limbo, and it's no man's paradise.
It's really that, man. Every time I watch the news, I think the exact same thing. I'm like, man, how much longer are we going to be in this state? What's going to change it? Um, Very often, like I'll have conversations with my friends about, how a lot of religions have this reference to a second coming of a Messiah or a God.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think it's just the innate human tendency to look for a savior, look for a hero, wait for
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Like it's gonna come from the outside. But very few people know that enough people saying, okay, we are the ones who need to change it. And those people coming together is actually what's going to be that second coming.
right.
So like we're all just sitting in our seats and waiting for a miracle, waiting for something to change. But that's gonna have to come from us. We're the ones. We realize time and time again we cannot rely on our governments as
Yeah,
much as we want to. not everybody is invested in everyone else's collective suffering as much as we are, you know. Like we're so much, we can empathize so much more with what's happening, you know, the migrant crisis and everything, that our governments, I mean, they're living in a bubble. They don't really know. Their priorities are different.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that, like, we're all waiting for a miracle. We're waiting for something to change.
Yeah.
But we don't know when that is, what that is, and how to get there. We just feel really powerless. I think that's what it was. Like those two lines to me are a way to show powerlessness and also hope. Like there is a chance that things are going to change, but also, what do we do till then?
Yeah. Till then, we're
Yeah,
in no man's paradise. We're in this
that's it.
situation. And I feel like the last line of the chorus, "Have
Mhm.
you been waiting from the sidelines?" is you
Yes.
pointing finger at yourself, or
Yeah, I mean, all of us. I mean, not many of us, like, we can criticize as much as we want what happens at the borders and, oh, this person should have done that and this and that. None of us know what it's like to be an actual Jawan. No one knows what it's like to take that call and actually sacrifice troops for a greater cause, you know?
right,
And, you know, we can all stand and criticize from the sides. Anything you do, like even if you release a piece of music and you're very proud of it, for example, there'll be 100 people who are like, oh man, I would have done it different, I would have done it like that.
yeah, yeah,
They don't know, man. They don't know what circumstances you were under, what constraints you had, what you want. Nobody can stand from the outside and tell you what should have been. So all of
right,
us are also culprits of that. Like we feel like we can backseat drive a lot of things without actually getting involved in it. Like we
right,
all have opinions, we all have like ideas of how it should be. But we're all essentially just watching from the sidelines. We all have cushy lives. We're at
yeah,
home. As long as it doesn't directly affect us, we're still watching from the sidelines.
yeah.
That
So
and
this is
you're guilty of it, I'm guilty of it, all of us.
yeah. So this is almost like a question towards. I mean, it's also necessary, but I mean, it talks about maybe a little bit about armchair activism that a lot of people uh,
Yeah.
are part of. To some extent, it is necessary, but maybe in the real world or in the larger perspective, we don't know if it really matters or it really helps.
Yeah, I mean, the activism should result in some tangible change. That's
Right,
when it makes sense, you know, that's what revolutions are made of. That's what like large scale protests like the ones we saw earlier this year. All that is basically armchair activists getting up and saying, enough is enough, I can do something about this, and getting out and doing something.
right, right.
That's when there's actual change that can be effective. But just talking about it, discussing it over drinks, I mean, there's only that much that can solve unless
Yeah,
enough people sit down and do something about it.
yeah.
So, I
That's
mean,
so
it's
true.
not really like I was saying that to point fingers at anyone, just stating the fact that this is where we're at now. We have a lot
Yeah,
of people with lots of information and lots of opinions, informed ones as well.
right.
But how much change will that lead to? We're still at
Yeah,
the mercy of the people at the top.
yeah. It's also an interesting perspective to go into that line. You're giving a shared experience in that line.
Yeah. I'm sort of just echoing what everybody already feels and knows. People like my brother who've now come into a world after graduating and there's like no jobs. You know, what do you do? It's
Yeah,
just bad luck. It's just wrong place and wrong time, which is the line later on in the song.
yeah. I think the first verse is very metaphorical, but the second verse is literally like what's happening right now. So it kind of felt like it was written separately, but then now that you said that you've written it, so what was your idea behind going into such a powerful second verse? Like,
I think really what was on my mind was just how much media talks about these issues and how, you know, there'll be one issue that everyone's talking about for 3 days,
yeah,
distracting from other issues. It's not that those issues don't exist. And
yeah,
then, like, later on, there's another thing, you know, just last week, it was all about Sushant's suicide.
yeah,
And the news was just rife with that. Like, this celebrity said this, and that someone else said that, and mental health this, and all of that. we should be talking about mental health regardless, not just when a celebrity commits suicide.
Commit suicide.
That's
Yeah.
not what it is. At the same time, don't keep pushing this idea that you're almost glorifying um, a celebrity's suicide, to the world. It's going to put aside. It's going to put across a message that you can be like martyred or glorified by suicide, and that's not a good message to put out to young people,
Yeah.
especially to young vulnerable people at a time like this. So okay, this is just one thing that was just like a tangent, but what I'm saying
Yeah.
is everything is in cycles, like even news, events, everything is like the flavor of the season.
Right.
uh, Today, yes, everything is coronavirus, this pandemic, that recession, this. 5 months down the line, it might be a different set of things,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that the old things are gone. Just because you're
Right.
not talking about it doesn't mean that they cease to be problems.
Right.
So even like with all the protests, like earlier this year, that was all the news was talking about. And then the lockdown became the predominant piece of news. It's not like those frustrations have gone away. It's not like
Yeah.
those tensions have been suppressed. They still
Yeah.
exist. We don't hear about it in the news so much.
Yeah, that's true. You go about these lines like it's not just a footnote on the news. It's not even about which side you choose. I might be the flavor of the season, but tomorrow they'll come for you. Uh, I want to talk about the last line, but tomorrow they'll come for you. Since you wrote this line back when the when you saw the episode, what did you mean by this particular line?
I think I was thinking about just the general tensions in the Middle East for literally all of our lives, Like all of us were born in the 90s.
Yeah.
And even from that time onwards, the Gulf War and everything, there was always this talk of like oil and tension in the Middle East and America coming in and causing problems.
Right.
At every point of time, it was a different country. There was Iraq, and then now it's Syria. So it's like, who's next? It
Yeah.
makes you think. It's going to be full-blown resource wars from now on. Right now it's oil. Soon it's going to be maybe drinking water. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of who has what and who wants it the most. So it's going to boil down to greed, and someone is going to be the victim of it. And so maybe think about like, okay, fine, right now we're living in this time where these are the countries that are superpowers, these are the countries that are fighting back. But in 10 years time it's going to be different.
Yeah.
We're going to be living a very different reality. Like even when my parents were kids, Iran was a country which was, they had a completely different um, lifestyle. Before the Shah's fall and everything, it was very different. And then in the 80s, that changed. There was like a revolution. There was widespread like bloodshed and protests and all that for like years and years and years. So it's like that changed overnight. So now what else is going to change overnight is something that I thought about at that point.
The reason why I also want to emphasize on this line is because you end the first verse with a slightly optimistic point of view, which is I'm not wasted, I'll become what I will. But the second verse, you go very dark, where you just say, but tomorrow they'll come for you.
Yeah. I wanted it to like make people sit up and be like, oh shit, okay. Yeah. I mean, we're all happy and content because we're not victims yet.
Right, right.
But there's every chance that, that will change. I also thought about, at that time, minority groups in India. Like Muslims in general have had it super hard, right? But they're not the only minority group, if you
Yeah,
think about it. There's so
yeah,
many other minority groups that are not facing that kind of hate. And who knows, like, if it wasn't Muslims, it would have been someone else.
yeah, yeah.
And, like, I really hope things get resolved and, people's minds are changed at the end of it. There's more humanity, more compassion. But I feel like it's just hardwired into human beings to always want conflict, to always see an us and them difference.
Right,
I mean,
right.
if it's not religion, it's caste. If it's not caste, it's social straight
Class.
up. Yeah, it's something.
Yeah, there's
I
always.
feel like it's hardwired into us to see differences and, start conflict based on it. sad, but I think that's our nature.
Right, right. Uh, and you're taking a very sarcastic approach on the next line. You say, "Bet you've been waiting on the sidelines," rather than
Yeah,
"Have you been waiting on the sidelines?"
yeah. I want to be like, okay, I know. It
Yeah.
is the case.
Third time the chorus comes in after this thing, and then "Welcome to the Age of Limbo. Welcome to the shift of paradigm." Here's your kind of um, addressing that here we are now, and there's no turning
Yeah,
back from here.
yeah. There's always going to be some kind of change. I never thought that we'd be living through a pandemic. I really
Yeah,
thought that it's, a future apocalyptic event that'll happen. It will happen. I just don't know how soon. And yeah, it just so happened that like literally a year and a half later, here we are, locked down with no work and no way to even go out.
yeah,
And it just like, okay, now this is the age of limbo for us. But then
yeah.
the next thing that's going to happen is a full-blown recession. Like people are going to be out of jobs, unemployment is going to soar. There's just going to be less demand, less money in the market, like all those economic things. That's going to be the next limbo. Like coronavirus, yes, it'll hopefully leave our system very soon. But
It's
this is going to be a longer lasting.
it's a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. And then there's going to be, already there's a mental health crisis. So that's another thing. So it's like literally everything that was mildly balanced has now been tipped.
Yeah,
And that's
that's true.
just going to keep happening in cycles of different things.
Right. And then you have the last line, "In the wrong place at the wrong time." Kind of fits in very perfectly to a lot of people who've graduated this year.
Started new businesses, put down money for a lease, taken loans, and then boom, lockdown. And it's not like the loans are going to go away or the money spent is going to come back, but they're just at that point where like there's nothing they can do. And some people are clearly suffering more than others just because of where they are in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a very hard-hitting song. This you wrote back in 2018,
Yeah, end 18.
end of 18. And when did you decide to record this song?
We've been recording the album since early last year. So we've had this song and like 7 others
Okay.
working on. And yeah, just like we started with a demo, we actually did very heavy demoing before we went into the studio to record the
Okay.
parts. We
Okay.
knew exactly what we wanted out of the takes.
Right.
I've never got any recording process in such an organized manner ever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
so we
was
did
it
a lot
like?
of production. We like literally made all of the stuff at at home, with just basic recordings, pilot vocals, and all of that. The groove I kind of had already. I made it on my keyboard sequencer. I just like went into the sequencer and made this groove, and then there's like a very specific tempo range within which it sounds good. Like if it's even slightly faster or slower, it doesn't work. So this is
It's
like the
what,
sweet spot.
85, 86? What is it?
Um, 83.
It's 83. Okay.
So it was like literally 85. Usually it would take like a 5 or a 0,
Yeah.
but 85 was too fast, 80 was too slow. So like we
Yeah.
brought like 83.
Especially for the mood of the song, it should work because if it's a little faster, you might just lose the gravity of what you're trying to say.
Yeah, and if it's a little too slow, then it gets draggy.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's very much about finding the sweet spot. Like actually finding the right tempo is such a vital part of the process of
Yeah.
recording.
So when
Like
you were
it just
writing this, when you're writing this, you must have sung it in a different tempo, I'm assuming, and then when you're trying to put your
mildly, yeah. Because also when I sing it on my own, I mean, it's not like I'm singing it to click. I'm
yeah,
singing it 3 times. So then, I would maybe rush during the pre-choruses or slow down during the chorus if I'm just playing it, performing on my own.
right,
But the moment you set it to click and you have to sing to that, then you'll notice that some sections are sounding slower than you imagine
yeah,
and some are.
Yeah.
So then you have to kind of like compromise, maybe like, turn it up a little bit. Then you have to, go up and down one by one
Yeah.
and uh, and see. But usually if you do the metering right, and if you set a rough tempo and a rough groove correctly, then most of that job is already done.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you were demoing this song in particular, uh, uh, did you know right from the start that you were going to use strings so heavily in it?
Yeah, straight up. I definitely wanted strings from the start. I just used strings for mango showers.
Yeah.
So, that was definitely on my mind. Like even for mango showers, I knew I wanted strings.
Right.
And
Right.
this is also one of these songs I'm like, it's gotta have strings. Strings or nothing. Like
Yeah.
even if I tried to use pads, it might not have had the same effect.
Yeah. Yeah. Strings
So
have that quality of just making it emote everything better.
yeah, definitely. And um, I'm a huge sucker for strings and any orchestral sounds, so I love it. I'm like, especially with these chords, I mean, they just lend themselves so well to a string arrangement. It has to be.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, we programmed the strings. Arnav Bal, my
Yes.
producer, he and I sat together, and he had some experience with string arrangement. He'd actually learned string arrangement.
Okay.
I've never learned chord arrangement, so I don't know. But I basically know how I wanted to sound and that sort of thing. So we sat together, and he actually showed me a little bit about how you arrange for strings, how you should never have certain harmonies. You shouldn't go parallel harmonies like you do with vocals. There's like a very different way of like layering and creating tension and release. So I learned a lot of stuff while working on this actually. If you notice, the song doesn't have any guitars
Yeah.
and any harmony.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you that.
So it's like if someone goes like, "Oh, you're a singer-songwriter, so definitely your song must have guitars and harmonies." Has
Yeah.
neither.
It has neither. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah,
why didn't you have the guitars? Was it a very conscious choice, or you just didn't feel it?
it never had guitars. For me, as far as I was concerned, I never really played the song also live with guitars. Like it was very much a keys song,
Okay.
and I didn't hear guitars on it from the start.
Right.
It was like we even tried. Like at one point, we actually even tried playing guitars and tracking it and seeing if it could maybe work if played differently. Like even like parts, small parts in the electric, just didn't have that appeal. So
Right.
we decided to not do it. We tried the same thing with harmonies. I was all for having harmonies. We tried all kinds of different harmony ideas. Nothing worked.
Nothing
Just
worked.
not even DT. Like there's one line that is DT'd in the whole
Which
song.
which line is DT'd?
The second time, the second chorus, where it goes like, "Have you been watching from the sidelines?" That
Right.
part. That's
Okay.
the only line that's
You mean the
DT'd.
bet you've been watching from the sideline, the second chorus?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay. That's the only line that's been DT'd. Oh, wow. And there's a lot of delay on your vocals,
Yeah, at
especially
the end
on
of certain
the
lines.
second chorus onwards, I think.
Yeah, so we usually added the delays at the ends of certain phrases or lines, leading into the next thing, like at the end of a verse leading into the chorus, or end of chorus leading to verse or something.
Right.
That's where we usually like add the things just to the delays just to kind of fill up that space and keep it going.
Who's played the strings, by the way?
This guy called Luke Moeller, he's from Nashville. He
Okay.
lives in Nashville. He's from
Okay.
Australia, and I found him online
Okay.
and sent him the song and said, "Hey, would you like to, play strings on this?" And he said, "Yeah, for sure."
Okay.
And we were already in a lockdown situation when we were recording strings.
Okay.
So whether we were sitting here or anywhere, or we had string players also, we would have had to do it remotely.
Yeah.
It was
So
like,
he
why not?
recorded his parts there and he sent them out.
Yeah, in like 2 hours. All
Oh,
of it.
wow. That's fast.
Yeah, really record speed. He was
Wow.
super quick. The strings were done the quickest.
Did you have the melodies that he wanted to
Yeah, we
play?
written out all of the notations. We made MIDI string references of each part, and then we kind of put it all together on one folder and then just sent it his way with a whole other Word document with just notes. of like,
Okay.
okay, emote like this here, make this happen here. So all of
Okay.
those things we added separately, and we sent it to him, and he nailed it. Like I think we literally, yeah, he nailed it for both songs that we asked him to play strings. So it was great, super easy to work with.
When it comes to, uh, and I've noticed this about your music, uh, is there has been a slight shift in terms of the sound that you have from your first EP.
I just do whatever comes to me, man. I don't think about it so
You're
much.
not
Like
thinking
I
about it at all.
no. In fact, like it just so happens that Mango Showers and Age of Limbo, two consecutive songs, have a similar vibe, which is
Yeah.
this kind of dark orchestral alt pop space. You'll be surprised, but I have other songs on this album that are a lot more like synth pop, a lot more like lighter, more straight up pop songs
Right.
than this. It just happened that these two came one after the other.
Okay.
So I don't necessarily I get bored when I restrict myself to one sound. I like to have different things that I can dive into to, kind of emote better. The trade-off with sticking to one kind of sound is you have less of a range to express emotions. Like,
Yeah.
a sad song and a happy song, the tendency for them to sound very much in the same space is high.
Yeah.
So I really like jumping between like subgenres within pop. I find it interesting to explore that. Also because my influences are like anything. It's just I have the craziest, most random influences ranging from like classical to um, hip hop and from like 80s super cheesy synth pop to more top 40 kind of current stuff. So it's like I don't have one specific, set of influences that I draw from.
Okay. Okay. So you take in like every song as a project, and you see it for what it is, and then kind of try and put elements according to it. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think it is like, oh, this has to fit well with the arsenal of everything else I have. I'm like, let's do what's right for the song. Because at the end of the day, the song is its own identity. Like,
Yeah.
whether or not I'm the artist, the
Yeah.
song needs to be done justice to.
Yeah.
So I think about it from that point of view.
But when you're thinking about an album, now that this is also a part of the album. So is Mango Shah's part of that album, or is this a separate single?
I took an executive decision to not
To
make it
not
a
have
part
it
of.
on the album?
It was too long from when it was released to now, and it was produced by someone different.
Okay.
And I've already made that statement with Mango Showers. I feel like it didn't necessarily warrant being on the same album as the other songs.
All
But the
right.
other songs stand on their own
Okay.
without Mango Showers being the single.
Okay. So Age of Limbo is a part of the album. So how aware are you? Are you also thinking about the sound of the entire album, or because I mean, the album should at least one album should sound like a cohesive unit. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what a lot of artists kind of go by. Is that what you're
yeah.
thinking about? Is that where it comes from to have certain things, or are you just free flowing and every song has its own separate identity? What is it
Every
like?
song does have a separate identity. Like if you hear it also, there's literally half the album is like slightly more, you know, for lack of a better word, heavy. Not heavy, but like heavy in terms of production and um, the elements that have gone into it. And then there's
Right.
another that's more simple and like stripped down.
Okay.
Uh, but still, they kind of live together on one space because we'll have like one element that goes into both sides of the thing. So it's kind of like a mixture of different things right through. Like just because it's a softer song doesn't mean it won't have any sense, or just
Right.
because it's a heavy song doesn't mean it won't have, say, acoustic guitar or something like
Right.
that.
Right.
So overall, they sound like one cohesive unit, but at the same time, it's not all one sound.
How are you preparing yourself to go into writing sessions for different musicians? Are you prepared with exactly what you want for them, or are you taking it with the flow? What is your approach like collaborating with other musicians?
Um, for me, collaboration is something I haven't done too much of, like when it comes to writing. I need to know the person really well, and I need to know exactly what they're about, what they like, what they're drawn to.
Right.
And that comes with a lot of like hanging out, just shared sessions where we share music and memes and whatever nonsense,
Yeah.
just need to get on board with that person completely. I mean, a lot of people have like, approach me for collaborations and let's write a song together and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, cool, but I literally can't guarantee that there will be something fruitful coming out of it because it's a super subjective thing. I mean,
Yeah.
literally,
That's true.
have a great writing session with one person, and then on a different day, absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think it just comes down to like how that moment pans out. Like, how do you feel on that day? One of our really good friends had lost her boyfriend. And,
Right. Right.
that was the same day that Jishnu and I were meeting for a writing session.
Right.
And we had this whole conversation about it. And we were both visibly, um, affected by it. And we didn't know what to call the song, and we didn't know what to start with. And then it boiled down to just the idea of providence, and that's what we call the song. So the song
Yeah.
is called Providence. We wrote from that point of view of like, anything can happen now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And being on that same page is so vital. Either having a shared experience that you can draw from, or having a similar opinion, or having like completely different opinions, but then you like face off each other, and then it's that.
Yeah.
So, but again, I haven't written enough with people to tell you for sure. Well, this is
Right.
just my
Right.
experience.
But what about when you're getting into a session, when you're writing, uh, say like synth parts with Rohan, you're sitting down with him, or drum parts with JJ. How's that coming together? Are you writing separately with each of them, or are you jamming and then figuring things out?
So most often how it's worked is like I'll have a song, I'll play it acoustic for them, and then they'll sort of say, okay, let's try this.
Yeah.
We'll come up with the part. Like say JJ will maybe come up with the drum groove, and then Stuart will play off of that. And then, all of us, we have like a really open communication. It's not like we're only figuring out what we want to play, but we also go like, hey, why don't you try that? And then, someone else will suggest, instead of just going from this chord to this chord, let's go this chord, and then this chord.
Right.
Like let's
Right.
pass the chord, and then we all get on board with that.
Right.
So the arrangement session actually becomes a lot more collaborative. That's when all of us are kind of pulling in our
Okay.
collective
Okay.
ideas.
So you're arranging with them. You're not separately sitting in your room and like figuring out all the arrangements and then sending them for them to kind of play on.
No. No, but I do send them references. Like, for example, a very simple thing is if you play a stick, it's someone can either hear it in half time or in double time,
Right.
the groove.
Right.
So to say like, hey, I think the groove should be in double time and it should be like this song. And then, you send them a reference and say like, something like this feel of that same groove. Like, swing it a little bit
Yeah.
or very heavy on the toms or heavy on the hi-hats or, something like that. For Age of Limbo, I never sat with JJ. I made the jungle.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
it's not really black and white that way. It's not like one person does everything and then gives sheet music out or
Right.
something.
Right. Right. So you're working with, first of all, very important is that you're working with people that you're really comfortable with, and you can tell them if something doesn't work very bluntly, and they're being your friends. It becomes easier for you to kind of express yourself.
Yeah. I mean, we are very vocal with saying no, that idea doesn't work, or no, it doesn't sound good, or it sounds
Right.
like that, or
Right.
we're pretty. Our communication is really open that way. We've been working together for like what since 2016, so that's like
Right.
4 years now.
Right.
We have that level of comfort where we can, like so often JJ will be like, that tone is terrible, change it. And then I'm like,
Brutal.
cool. No, it's not working, or no, it's too shiny, or something like that.
Right.
we are at a point where we can tell each other things and take it the right way. So it's great.
The start of the song, you start on the second beat, like you don't start on the one. You're starting on an
Yes.
and. Uh,
Yeah. I love
uh,
that.
yeah, that was very interesting because it's always very hard to catch when you're going to start that. Uh, and that I think you because you start on the second, I think your pre-chorus also starts on the third or something like that.
Verse
Uh,
also, actually all of it, if you think about it, like even the verse, even the chorus, it's one. Welcome to the
right. It starts on a
all
two. It doesn't start on an. It starts on a two. All of them.
it all starts. Yeah, I mean, I just like that it sounds more interesting than saying starting on the one. I
Right.
like going over the bar line or starting just before the one.
Yeah.
Just messing with the tempo. I mean, not tempo, the placement of beats a little bit. Sometimes it's not even as straightforward as the two. Sometimes it's like the one and or
Yeah.
like the three.
Making sure that you're kind of experimenting on that
Yeah,
level as well.
that's the thing that actually Tejas introduced me to.
Okay.
He's also very much about the displacement of things. And when we sat together, the chords of the song were very much like very few places actually were on the up and most of it was on the down. When we sat together and we were arranging it, he was like, "No, put this also on the up, put this also on the up," and we rewrote the ups and downs of it when we arranged it for the band, and then we wrote the groove also in such a way that it was like, how do you describe the groove? It's slightly on the offs, not
Yeah.
on the one.
Yeah. In fact, it starts on and off.
Yeah. So it's like and one and three and four and one and so it's like very much on the off beats, which
Yeah.
is what makes kind of bounce.
Another thing that I wanted to ask you is very interestingly. I mean, the first thing that comes in the song is that A flat, tongue, tongue.
It's a honky tonk piano that was at the studio,
Okay.
and it actually has this kind of like old school, stringy, detuned sound. And we were actually planning to like just sample it and then use it. So Arnav went into the studio and he just went like clunk, 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 and we just like sample that and then we use it right through the song. Kind of sounds like an alarm or like,
Yeah. In the Space Odyssey, the red
oh
light.
yeah, I wanted it to sound like a kind of like bell, like a bell tolling, or like an alarm or some kind of signal,
Right.
which
So
is
you
was
had that idea right from the start that you wanted to have something
yeah.
alarming at the start.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, like even the name of the album is called Caution to the Wind. So I wanted
Okay.
a reference of like a caution, you know. So this was kind of doing that job.
Right.
So and it's the first song of the album. So the first thing you hear in the album will be clunk, clunk.
Wow.
So yeah.
And then you have the drums coming in, which are very compressed drums, which happen through. I think till they come in right after the first chorus. You have the compressed drums happening. I don't think the bass comes uh, in the first verse chorus at all. Are you pulling from your alt rock influences when you do that? Because it reminds me of like very early Linkin Park kind of a space.
New metal kind of zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Somewhat. Actually, we were planning to have the drums come in only in the second part. We didn't have the idea of the sample groove in the beginning, and then at some point we're like, no man, this is sounding too empty without any kind of a rhythm reference. But then we didn't want to put the whole groove in, because then
Hmm.
it's just there's nothing left to build to. And so we had this idea of just saturating and like compressing that groove like a loop of it. It's not even like we got JJ to play the whole song, but we just took like an 8-bar loop of it, and then we worked on that and then just looped that.
Okay.
So it's actually like a sample. I really like that whole 90s thing of like a sample groove, like that when the levee breaks kind of groove. And this song just had that. It was just like asking for it. So we put that in, and it was just like, just keep it going, then we'll add the drums later. And that
Right.
just worked out.
Yeah, and then you have right after the first chorus when you have that synth thing happening. There's a synth riff happening, which is just like silent, and yeah, and then right after that you have your drums and bass and everything coming in. Uh,
Yeah.
you have the strings happening throughout when you're singing. Was it just to kind of create like a bridge between the lo-fi compressed stuff and your vocals, just so that it doesn't sound like completely detached from the song?
Yeah, I just wanted some harmonic reference because otherwise there's literally nothing else indicating the chord. There's no bass,
Yeah,
there's no pad, there's no piano yet, there's nothing else. So we just thought like one single string melody, like one line melody would do the job.
yeah,
So it's not playing the chord, but it's making you fill in that gap in your mind. So we thought of just that for the first half of the first verse. In the second half, there's one like a pedal note happening at the bottom. Excuse me, and that gives you the illusion of like a two-note chord.
yeah, yeah.
And then the chord comes in for the chorus. But till then, it's just like we wanted starkness, but we didn't want complete starkness where you have no reference for what melody is sitting on. And that's why we
Yeah,
wanted, something. So that's why
right.
we had
And this
single.
decision of compressing the drums and having the strings kind of act as a melodic reference, was it during the production process or it was there right from the pre-prod?
During the production process.
During the production process.
Yeah. I mean, I did want a kind of like grittier sounding drum sound for the song. But Arnav just like one day he messed with it and he came up with this. And I was like, it sounds sick. And so it just stuck. In fact, we did very little to that sample drum groove from last year and now. Like that was the
Okay,
thing that we barely touched.
okay,
Everything else kind of changed a little bit, moved a little bit. But this was just there. It was just like, this is set. So even from
yeah,
our earliest demos, this groove was there in
right,
its exact state. For Age of Limbo, I think we knew very early on what we were going for. Like our questions were more in the vein of, do we want harmonies? How would we want the harmonies? Do we want guitars? Don't we want guitars? Um, and live when we play it, Lala actually plays slide. So that sounds really cool live when he goes like "Woo" and stuff like
yeah,
towards the end.
he's
And it's good
amazing.
fun. Yeah, he's amazing. Shout out to Lala. But yeah, for the recorded version, we're like, it doesn't need that. We can. This sounds complete as it is.
I also wanted to ask you about the interlude between the two verses.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it stands out because of its chord progression. The song is the darkest in the interlude,
Mm-hmm.
I feel. Uh,
I always had that interlude
you had the
because
interlude right from the start.
yeah, I didn't have a bridge. I didn't have any other verse. I wrote this thing. I was like, okay, fine. Now it's very much in this A flat spot. Let's take it away from that for a second. So that's when I was like, let's go to the major. And then, I mean, well, the major as in the E.
The E, yeah.
So go to the E and then from the E build and try and come up with like a separate thing. I'm a big fan of this Tamil composer called Ilayaraja. And Ilayaraja, like for me, one of my favorite things of his compositions is his extremely extravagant BGMs, as they call it. These interludes.
Yeah,
He makes the craziest interludes.
yeah. He's known for harmonic melodies.
Yeah, like literally everything. Like his compositions are so lush with arrangement ideas. Like in any song, like any Ilayaraja song you pick, even if it's the simplest on the face 4 chord song, there's a whole lot more complexity going on,
Right,
And if he doesn't show it in the main song, he'll show it in the interlude.
right.
that's his spot to be like, okay, this is what I have to offer.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just gonna, this is a tribute to Raja. As in, I just want to have like a really cool interlude on this one.
Yeah.
If I'm doing the whole hog with getting like strings and stuff, I want the strings and that cinematic sound to shine through in this bit.
Yeah. It's a sign of a interesting song that enables so much conversation. There's so
Mhm.
much thought given behind everything that you've done, and
You're a musician and you also understand and relate to so much that we can actually talk about it.
exactly, yeah. And it just it's a nice feeling to see people around you doing such interesting work and putting so much thought into their work. So I'm very glad, and thank you so much for
Thank
so
you. I'm
yeah.
looking forward to the thing.
Yeah, thank you so
Yeah.
much for this.
Bye
Thanks a
bye.
lot. Bye. Well, that was the second episode. I'm sure you got a lot of information and a lot of beautiful insights into songwriting and her process. If you thought this was interesting, go watch her video again and maybe spam her with wonderful comments about her song. If there's any artists that you want me to interview during the course of this show, just comment below and let me know. And also let me know what you thought about the show. If there are any of your friends who you think would be interested in watching this, just share it with them. I guess I'm a YouTuber now, with making these videos on YouTube. Just like, share, subscribe, and let the internet do its thing, I guess. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.